Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished professional from the Gold Coast in Australia, Mags Bell. Mags, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ash. It is an absolute pleasure and
Thank you.
privilege to be here.
Thank you. Mags is a keynote speaker, a podcaster, and a coach to executives. She's also an author, and all of you know I'm always very partial to authors. She's an author of a book titled What the Bleep is Coaching. So, Mags, my first question to you, what motivated you to become an executive coach, and how has your own journey influenced the way you coach?
I didn't set out to be a coach, Ash. In fact, I was probably the last person on earth that anyone would think I'd be a coach because I was very, I would say, dictatorial. This is what you do. I know best, so you do it this way. And my first step into management was really for the badge. So I know there was some things I'd done well, but I know I'm bound to have done things that weren't so good because it was really all about me wearing the badge and getting the accolades and making sure we do so well. And then I went back to what we call carrying the bag. So I went back to sales. So my career as a manager lasted a couple of years, and then I got frustrated with it because people weren't doing what I asked them to, and I couldn't understand why. Some people, of course, did, but I really didn't get leadership. I got a bit of management, and I know that target-wise we done well. I was really frustrated, so I went back to selling, and I ended up in the pharmaceutical industry, and I worked there for a good 15, 16 years. And it was in that time I started really understanding what a good leader, a good manager was, and a bad manager. That really opened my eyes. And then I thought I'll step into management again. And I started making my way up the management tree. And as part of the tools, I was taught, and I say the words very definitely, I was taught to coach. And I went on my first coaching course, and I honestly didn't get it. I just kept thinking, I just go and tell them what to do, blah, blah, blah. But the second time I had an issue with a member of staff, and it was at that I thought, oh, maybe this will work. So I actually took notes and started practicing. And when I went back, I tried it. It worked a treat. And I thought, whoa, maybe there's something to this coaching. And it was really me having to learn to listen more and to be able to reflect things back. And that was where my journey in coaching started. And it was the best tool I had in my bag. So as I moved up each section, I realized that actually I loved coaching. I loved developing people. I loved watching them go from where they were to where they wanted to be. And sometimes where they didn't even realize they wanted to be, but we got them there because that's what came out of the conversation. So it was by sheer accident. And I'd say the speaking was the same because as a sales rep for pharmaceuticals, I was speaking 1-to-1, 1-to-5 or 10, and then 1-to-many in lecture theatres when I was speaking to doctors. I was presenting all the time. And I hadn't realised in my previous career, I worked for a charity called Bernardo's, I would stand on stage and get people to give me their money. So I had actually been practicing my skill of speaking all those years, but it's not what I thought it was. I just thought that was part of my job.
Correct.
So I fell into both of them, not even realizing.
Amazing. And, you have an organization called Leading Me, as we can see in the banner behind you. How do you define effective leadership in today's world?
Well, it's funny because as soon as I saw what the name of your program, The Brand Called You, was, I just went, I have to have a chat with this man because this just fits beautifully. I think the biggest issue we have today is that a lot of leaders expect to know everything, and it's not that they are expected to know it, they expect to know everything. And they think leadership is about knowing everything, directing everything, and getting things done so that we reach that target goal, whatever it is they're going for. Not realizing that we have specialities all around about us. And obviously, the first thing I'm going to say is, without understanding how to lead me, I can't lead anyone, because people follow. And if I'm not leading me in the right way, so if I'm fearful of things, which means I don't know me well enough, I'm fearing the shadow side of myself, as Jung would talk about.
Yeah.
That shadow side, once we actually embrace that, it becomes a revelation for us, and we're able to let that down and let other people help and do and bring out their skills and knowledge. So it's about lifting other people up, but most of the time what we're doing is we're trying to hide behind the things we fear of ourselves. So leading me really is about that opening up to, who am I? What am I about? What do I stand for? So that those who want to will come and follow, and then we can build great things.
Amazing. Thank you. And based on all the work you have done as a coach, as a mentor with so many leaders, what are some of the common mistakes or challenges leaders face in today's world?
It's funny because often I'll get people who run businesses, lead businesses, and they'll say, "Yeah, but it's different for us, Mags, in this business." And I laugh every time, because it isn't. Business is business is business. Leadership's leadership. The biggest issue people have got is thinking they are so unique that the issues that they have to be overcome in a completely separate way from everyone else.
Right.
But in actual fact, and you'll know this so well, Ash, the only difference in businesses are who our customers are, and the knots at the end of that sheet that we look at most months, most weeks, at the end of the year. It's just the zeros, really. Everything else in business is pretty much the same.
Correct.
So the biggest mistake we make is thinking we are so unique, not as individuals, because we are unique as individuals, but we're so unique as a business that it's going to take something else, and we don't listen. So I'd say the biggest thing is listening to those who've been there, seen it, done it, listening to those who have got real great things to say about what they've done so that you could apply that. I think I've got to be able to do this myself. I think that's the biggest thing of all.
Very well said. So now let's move a little bit and talk about leading me. And, when I was preparing for my conversation with you, an interesting point, came up, was that you help to guide leaders to master their egos. And egos is a very important factor in leading, both positive and negative ego.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more, and if possible, share a story about this.
Well, the easiest story to share is my own ego. So the first thing I want to dispel is the ego is not a bad word. As soon as people hear it, we react to it. No, I don't have an ego. Leave your ego at the door before you come into this business meeting.
Correct.
We can't leave the ego at the door. It is part of our human psyche. So saying things like that, and this is the misunderstanding we've had of ego for many, many years. We can't leave it anywhere. It comes with us. The biggest thing we can do is balance the ego. But often what we find is we'll bring an unbalanced ego into a room, a boardroom, a room full of people that you're supposed to be leading. The easiest way to describe this is I have a little diagram that you can find most times on the internet somewhere for those who are listening to this. And if not, then if you go to your YouTube channel, they'll certainly see it on screen now. This is called the Leading Me Ladder of Leadership. So in the middle part, in this trunk of our body is really where everything flows beautifully. The cells in our body will get rid of the old cells, renew new ones, repair others. Everything in this section is absolutely wonderful. And when the ego is being mastered by us, that is where it sits. So this is where confidence comes from. This is where knowing comes from. Okay. However, we have a little thing that happens sometimes that we allow the ego to master us. And this is where we'll go to one side, which, for example, I call bigging it up. So we big it up and we try to control everything. We're trying to make judgments all the time. You know, I'm right, you're wrong. And in this environment, in this day and age, we have a lot of this, okay? In countries, in politics, in the business world, we go into this bigging it, not even realizing it's our ego that's dragging us there. So it's mastering us. Or we go to the other side because we live in a law of polarity, right? This earth is full of polar, you've got North and South Pole, let alone our yin yang within, right? So if we can balance that yin yang, which for me, the ego is part of that, then we go into belittling. And that is where we blame others for what's happening, or we go into victimhood, which is all about poor me. And I have a tool that when I catch myself in this bigging it up, I use a thing called the 3 keys to eliminate your shite to get me back. And also, when I am belittling self or others, I'll use the 4 R's release model to move me back in. And that's 4 R's. I know with my Scottish accent that can be mistaken, but it's the R's that we have. So it's a release model that helps us silence the inner critic. So for me, I mean, when I was young, my inner critic, would run riot big time. I would big it up. So I'd go from one side of that leading me ladder. So the leading me ladder isn't an up and down ladder. It's not even a side to side. It's from a side inwards. Okay. So when we come into that middle ground, we are mastering the ego, but the ego masters us when it takes us out the way. So if I find myself out there, I'll use one of the tools to bring me in. And many moons ago, I allowed my inner critic to run riot, which means if I was there, I'd have to go up to bigging it. The bigging it we sometimes see is people feeling insecure, unsure. So they big it up even more. And you get it a lot in business, someone overriding someone else because they're fearful someone's going to catch them out. Okay. And I certainly had that when I was younger. I still sometimes catch myself, but I've got tools now to bring me back. Okay. I often, and this will help, the analogy that I use will help your listeners. I often talk about we're in the movie theatre, okay, and we're watching a movie. So our eyes are just fixed to the screen. We're in the movie and something happens. Oh my God, I got a fright in my life. That's so funny. Oh my God. So we are reacting to everything in that movie. And then we hear a crisp packet and we come out of the movie and we realize there's a couple who've come in and sat down, and I didn't even see them do that because I was so far in the movie, I never saw anything come in. Now I'm out of the movie. I can watch the movie. I can see everything around it. I can see the lights that are dimly there. I can see the darkness. I can see the couple. I can see my other half sound asleep, thinking, we're going to have a really good conversation about this movie when he's not watched any of it. Right? So I can see everything. I can now choose my reactions to. So we spend a lot of our time in the movie. So I'll often say to clients, when they're talking about a certain thing, I say, were you in the movie or were you out the movie? And they go, oh God, no, I was in the movie. Right. So your ego was managing you. What was that about? And then we'll get into it. So that's an example of how we use leading me to keep ourselves back into that middle ground of flow, because that's where flow happens. That's where we're totally connected and everything just comes easily to us. And the confidence is there in that knowing. That's where we want to live, because it's a much nicer
What a great
place.
response. Thank you. But, you know, in the little chart that you just showed me, you also speak about the 4 R's release model. For silencing the inner critic. Tell me a little bit more about this model and how does it foster confidence and authenticity?
This model, all my models come from my experience, Ash. It's not that I sit down one day and think, I'm going to build this model for people and we'll do it. It really, this one really came out of, I gave myself depression many moons ago. And I realized that I had got myself there and I got help to get myself out, but I used a thing called CBT. There was a practitioner CBT, and I sometimes use CBT in my own practice now. And when I came out, I was thinking, I don't ever want to go back there again. Right. That's not a place that I want to be. And so many people in business land there because we put so much pressure on it, and the inner critics telling us so much, and then we're bigging it up because we're trying to hide that, you know, I'm not good enough, whatever it may be. And it was born out of that. And just I'll show you something now on the inner critic and what the 4R release model is. But I do have a free webinar, and I'm happy to offer that to your listeners, so that they can go and find out much more about the model. They get the model, so it's a free, but they get the explanation of and how to use it. Okay, so I'm only going to touch on it very slightly for yourselves. But I noticed that no matter how many times you tell the inner critic to shut up, it doesn't work. Right. So I was like, well, we all know we have that saboteur, that there is something there for every one of us, because that's part of life. But how do I get it to shut up as quick as possible? Right. And eventually I came up with this, but it wasn't even a model. And it was a client of mine, and she's a wonderful woman, doctor, as a MD. She was brought over to set up a medical faculty over here for one of the unis. Very intelligent, very clever woman, has her own business. And she said to me, Max, how have you just done that? And I was thinking, I just asked you to do this, and then that. And she said, no, but how did you? And I'm going, it's obviously me, because I don't know why this isn't going to. And she said, no, can you tell me? You have a model in there. Can you tell me that? And I went, oh, do you know, you're right, Shirley. I have no idea. I need to go away. And that's the old competency. I had to step back down into being consciously competent. And that's where the model came from. So this model is the 4R release model. The first thing is we need to recognize what that inner critic is saying. So the word or phrase we're using against ourselves. The most important part of this model is the second step, that second R, which is reward. If we don't reward ourselves, if we don't start playing the game, and if we do not change how we are feeling at this point in time, because positive thinking doesn't actually work. And I explain that in, for those who are going, yes, it does, because I use positive thinking. It doesn't. Positive feel works. And I explain that in the webinar. So we have to go to a positive feel before we can do the third R, which is rephrase into the positive. If you don't get there in the feel, you won't actually believe what you're saying when you rephrase it. And then the fourth R is to repeat that same, because we're habitual, we're human beings. Some people ask how often does it take? I say if we really work well on the first three, sometimes you never have to repeat it, which I've done many times. So it's recognize first what you're saying, reward yourself for catching it, naming it, and then you have to find a happy place. Right? If you don't find a happy place, you won't move the feel. Then you can rephrase into the positive and feel the positive. Then you repeat. So that is the 4Rs release model.
Very, very interesting. Amazing model. Thank you. My next question is, I want to move to a little bit on about leaders, and you do work a lot with leaders. We've spoken about ego. We've spoken about, how they can manage their inner critic. We've spoken about leading me. How do you help leaders to develop a mindset that embraces change and innovation?
The first I've got lots of tools and lots of techniques and various things that we use, and that will be dependent on the person. Right. But the one thing that everyone starts with when they're working with me is I've got an online course called Decision Making Made Easy. Everyone starts there. And it doesn't matter how high up you are in the company, you know, what you've done as far as your vision, value, purpose stuff, you start there. Because what happens is most companies have got values on a wall. They've maybe got it on a website, but they don't necessarily live them. Right? They were done many moons ago. That leader's moved on, and they're still just holding on to the same things.
Yeah.
I am very much of, you actually need to know your own values. You need to know your purpose, and you need to know your at least 10-year vision. And I don't care what age you are, you still need a 10-year vision.
Yeah.
So most people don't go near that, Ash. So we start there. And most people have a bit of an idea of values, but don't know them enough. So if I say to you, what are your values, Ash? And if you take any time to even think about that, it means to me you have not spent enough time on them. And the majority of the time, and I'd ask your listeners to do the same thing. I'm going to ask the listeners, what are your core values? And if you've gone, then you don't know them well enough. Right? So we work on those and getting them really tight, and the words that they have. And if you're going to do the thing about, oh, it's integrity and it's honesty and trust. No, it's not. It's not. So you need to dig deeper than that. That's what we've all been taught.
Yeah.
So we go really deep on it to begin with, because without the knowledge of me, what I stand for, what I really need, what I'm here to do, what's my purpose, and what's that 10-year vision? How do I know I'm even working in the right, company, in the right situation? And you know this through the companies that you've developed, right? Once you have that, as a leader, I can inspire anyone because I have a true belief, and I'm leading me. I'm in that middle ground of knowing. We go to fear, we go out here, and when I say out here, the leading me ladder of leadership, when we are out there and the ego is leading us, right, and the bigging it up and belittling, this is mental health issues. This is why we have so much of a mental health issue all over the world. It's not just in one place, it's all over. It's because we don't know ourselves well enough, and we don't have the knowing. So we jump to the two sides to try and lead us, right? But if we're in that middle ground of, I know me, and I've done the work to know me, and I know what and I know what to say no to. And the thing is, usually, especially with your values, there's 3 brains in our body that I also go into when I'm teaching the 4 hours release model. But the 3 brains in our body, values sit in our gut brain, right? We know when we've gone against our values, even if we had this, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because the head, which can overrule the divine will, which is down in the heart and the gut brain, only speaks in language. So it tells, oh, well, it might be a really good opportunity. Well, I might get that, and that could be. So it goes against, and as soon as we do, we've just gone against a value, we feel sick to the stomach.
Amazing.
That's why. But so if we name them and we understand them, we don't allow the head brain to then overrule what the purpose of the heart, and the head brain then sits with the vision part, which is where the creativity comes. That's what the brain should be used for.
Great response. Thank you. So I have time for one more question, and I want to talk about your book, What the Bleep is Coaching. Tell me about your hypothesis when you wrote this book, and what are some insights that you could share, particularly relating to authentic questioning?
Yeah. Well, the book itself, I was never going to be a writer. I was never going to have a book. I wasn't interested in doing a book. But I was getting frustrated with people saying at the time, Max, what is coaching? Right? And some people would say, what is coaching? Which is why I came up with what the bleep is coaching, because I got that question a lot. And so I started thinking, how do I get people to understand what coaching is? I didn't want to write another coaching book. There's a million coaching books out there. And then I thought, I I wonder if I actually go to clients that were around at the time and ask them and say, would you share your story? So it's more like case studies, right? But it's stories, so everybody loves a story. So what I did was I used the same set of questions for 9 people in the story. Some people kept their own name, some people changed their name on it. That was up to them. We named they named their own chapter. And what I did was that same set of questions just shows you how unique we all are. The set of questions are at the back of the book, okay? And so I wrote the beginning of it saying what for me coaching was, and the difference between coaching, consulting, and mentoring, that type of thing. And then we go into the stories and people share what their journey of being coached was like.
Right.
So it allows people to go, I quite fancy coaching, but I'm not sure about it, to pick up the book and go, let me read and see if this is what I'm looking for. And then at the end of the book, they've actually got a whole coaching conversation in there. And I based that on the GROW model because it was the main model of the day. So it was based on the GROW, so people can see what that looks like. And I also put in the back of the book a set of questions. If you then by then think, yeah, I think I want a coach, you can then go to the back of the book and look at how to run an interview with a coach so you get the right coach for you. And that's really where it came from.
Amazing.
Ash.
Amazing. Max, on that note, we've unfortunately run out of time, but I want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey as a coach. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
We spent some time talking about ego, I think. And you're so right. We can't hang our ego or leave it outside because it's very much part of us. And I've often said there's good ego and bad ego.
Yeah.
We spoke about leading me. I think you gave me some very interesting thoughts on how you help guide leaders. And you illustrated this through your bar model. We spoke about the 4 R's release model, which was so fascinating. And I'm sure my viewers and listeners will go back, pause at that one slide and understand the 4 R's that you have written about. We spoke about values, and you're so right. Most of us don't tend to articulate our values to ourselves. And I've often done the same exercise and asked people, and they say, I'm honest, I'm trustworthy, I'm credible, etc. And finally, thank you for speaking to me about your book, What the Bleep is Coaching. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.